And also an honor to see a room full on the issue of climate justice, because often here on the sidelines of these UN meetings we have discussions around the environment, climate change, sustainability, and unfortunately these rooms are not as full. So I thank each and every one of you for being here this afternoon. Also to the young people around the world who today took action, to the young people here on my right hand side, I salute you, because it is young people who have brought the world's attention back to climate justice and to climate action that we need. As an activist within this space, I have worked actively since I was in school, and for the past 15 years we have tried to really drive home climate action, sustainability, the impact of climate change on our natural resources. As a South African, our country is rich with natural resources, but those natural resources have been plundered, not only by our own actions, but the actions of politics around the world. We run an organization called Generation Earth, and this is a movement to drive young people to talk about environmental issues. More so, this is an opportunity to network young people from around the world and from different corners of the environments that they come from, connecting them to have important discussions, and to also inspire young people to go into the spaces that will fill a green economy. The power of social media today is more powerful than ever before, and young people, no matter where they are, have the opportunity to engage, to talk, and to discuss the issues on climate change that they are so interlinked with. And it is a platform and a channel that each and every one has access to. It doesn't matter if you have a community of 10 people or a community of 10,000 people. We all have the ability to influence that very community we're linked to through Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We also have the power to decide what kind of content we put out. And if we are putting out information, if we are putting out messages of activism, such as we see today happening across social media, because of a young, brave Greta from Sweden, who last year turned heads from around the world, because she stood up and she said the things that are unpopular, but that so many of people were thinking. She stood up and she was brave enough to not only say something, but action change. So today, on this very momentous day, around the world, more than 120 countries are engaged in this very discussion. When we talk about climate change, three very important pieces of that puzzle are children, youth, and women. A great deal of my work has been to discuss and to bring to the table women when we talk about waste, water, food security, climate change. And in South Africa today, we have two very powerful movements that have started. One such movement by the city of Johannesburg, the biggest metropolitan city in Africa, and this is a program that was directed because of political will. I invited the mayor of Johannesburg to come to a cleanup, a community cleanup, on the 5th of June 2017. And he didn't only honor that invitation, but he said to us, what more can I do? And almost 2 years later, we have a solid structure in Johannesburg where the mayor on the third Saturday of every month goes out into the city and he physically cleans the city. And he asks for active citizens to join him, to walk a journey with him where we can all start to take responsibility. The government does have a duty to keep our cities clean and to keep our nations clean, to be responsible for nurturing and ensuring that natural resources are protected. But as citizens with a voice, we need to also not only sit and be armchair critics, we need to take action and be out on the ground in our communities. On this day 1 week ago, I spent the day with President Ramaphosa, the President of South Africa. And together, as a nation, again, we launched a campaign called Good Green Deeds, the President's way of asking all South Africans to join a movement of action in protecting the environment. We were responsible for the environmental community and school education, which we rolled out for a period of 10 days prior in the very city that he launched the campaign. And we will continue working on the education, environmental education, specifically in schools and to youth, to universities, under this banner and campaign. But we're seeing more climate and environmentally related action now more than ever before. But we forget, and we mustn't take for granted, the fact that each and every one of us has the ability and power in our own hands on a daily basis. But climate change doesn't only produce climate refugees. There is also an impact on refugees that already exist. And the impact of climate change on refugees, specifically my work has taken me to Western Sahara and to the Sahrawi refugee camps outside of Tindouf, where the impact of climate change is harsh. They are living under unlivable conditions in the middle of the Sahara Desert, where the impact of climate change is great. Access to water is limited. Access to being able to grow their own food because of climatic conditions is huge. And we need to, for a moment, also include in our conversations when we talk about climate change, the intersect of climate change and human rights. And that's where we come to today's discussion on climate justice. There is such an interlink between our human rights and climate change, but we don't often connect the dots. We often forget that when we're talking in forums such as these, and when we go out to schools, universities, community groups, religious gatherings, we need to make sure that people understand and people can feel part of that discussion. Not that it's something that's scientific or political, but something that affects you and I on an everyday basis. It affects our ability to access water. I come from a country that a year ago was dreading a day called Day Zero. Because in South Africa, it was a reality that we would turn on our taps and have no access to water because our dams had run dry. I'd walked in the biggest dam in South Africa exactly a year ago. I walked on the bed of that dam. There was not a drop of water. And we have seen the largest drought in our country in more than 250 years. Water is a precious resource. In my country and across our continent, we're a semi-arid country, and we forget that water doesn't come from a tap. Water is a precious resource and we need to protect it. We need to rethink of how we're using it. When we all are in spaces and places where we have a bottle of water, how many of us just leave a little bit of water and just leave that bottle instead of taking it with us, watering a plant? In the country I come from, water is scarce, and we have to be able to use water to the maximum potential. In the Sahrawi refugee camps 2 weeks ago, I visited with an amazing program and organization. There's a man called Talib Brahim, and Talib actually uses water within a food security program where he's able to reuse the water more than 5 times in a different system in order to produce food, to ensure that he is growing fodder, healthy fodder for his animals, and he's able to reuse the water in an aquaponic system. It's an incredible way to actually see innovation. When you have little access to resources, we seem to be more creative, more innovative. And I've learned this from the Sahrawi refugees who have very little access to these natural resources. On this day, let us not only honor the young people, but take action ourselves. Let us make sure that this is not just one day, but that leaving today, we continue to keep climate change at the top of our agenda. That climate justice must be something that we do as part of our daily lives, because each and every one of us is affected by the impacts of climate change, no matter which city and country we come from. And yes, the poorest of the poor are most affected. And I come from a continent, a beloved continent, that is affected in the worst possible way by climate change. And the injustice that is done to the people who have so little already is inhumane. And we need to ensure that we protect not only their human rights, but the climatic impact of their human rights as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Catherine.